Welcome back to Ask the Educator, a podcast for all professionals involved in medical device processing and sponsored by Healthmark Industries. The education team here at Healthmark has 280 years of combined experience in areas ranging from sterile processing, endoscopy, OR, biomed, to hospital and industry leadership. Our goal is to leverage our collective experience to answer one of your questions each episode, giving you the practical tips you need to succeed in the evolving world of device processing. My name is Kevin Anderson, clinical educator here at Healthmark, and I will be your host. Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ask the Educator. This is Kevin Anderson, your host. And for this episode, I have back with me Seth Hendee, another clinical education specialist here at Healthmark Industries. Seth, welcome back. It's always good to have you.
It's great to do these. I love it. Thanks for having me again.
Absolutely. So current events right now in sterile processing is one of the things that we've been hearing is there are shortages going on right now of sterilization wrap. So we have customers at Healthmark that are talking about this. We have seen people posting about this on social media. So we do kind of know that the shortage of this sterilization wrap is in part due to the fact that the materials are the same as PPE. And we all know what's been going on with PPE for the past year or so. However, this is leading SPD departments to try and fill this gap of this lack of sterilization wrap and to solve this problem of these sterilization wrap shortages. So one thing that they have been turning to is peel pouches. So I thought that Seth and I could talk about some of the important things to consider with peel pouches. So Seth, one question that I thought was interesting that came up was, can we place instrument trays inside of peel pouches? So what would you say about that, Seth?
That's a great question. And generally, I'm going to say yes. Okay. But let's qualify. We don't have a ton of stuff in AMI about pouches, right? They are one of our 3 barrier systems, and they're generally thought of as a little more delicate, right? They really are. Now you can go out, do some research. There are pouches with thicker paper and things like that. So you can do a little homework and you can potentially find a better pouch for that. But let's talk about what we do know. When Amy talks about it in section 9, it talks about selection of barrier systems. It says you've got to have the IFU because, of course, if there's anything in that manufacturer's IFU, we've got to be following it. Fine. There's several other bullet points because these pertain to every barrier system, but the ones that you should think about for peel packs when you're talking about maybe placing a small plastic tray or something like that inside. One bullet is resistant to tears and puncturing. So listen, when we're putting a square object with some corners on it inside that pouch, we're challenging it to resist punctures, right? And then, of course, maintain protection of the sterile contents during storage and transport. Again, on and off the shelf, in and out of a cart, all of those things are going to make those edges against that paper something that you have to consider strongly.
Exactly. I think those are very valid things to be thinking about. It's funny, though, when I think about trays going into peel pouches, it's something that I would have never considered. But when I got the question from a customer about it and I started looking into it, technically there's nothing that really prohibits it. Obviously, you wouldn't put, it around a rigid containment device because they're both sterile barrier systems. But if you had like a scope tray or a small plastic tray that could fit in there, you could do so. And some of these peel pouches are rather large as well. But that comes to the point, of the things that you mentioned. Are you going to be vulnerable to rips and tears? And it brings us to another question as well, which is about weight limits. Everybody seems to want to know what the weight limit is for items going into a peel pouch. And, when you scour the IFUs and, speaking from the ones that we distribute here at Healthmark, we know there's no weight limit in there. Part of the reason is probably due to all the different sizes and configurations, and how do you figure out a weight limit and the different sizes of devices. But we know there's not really a weight limit, even though the weight does matter, though, right? I mean,
Sure. That's it. Exactly. Well, and again, we get, guidance from Amy. What do they talk about? Generally used for small, lightweight, low profile items. And then they say, well, okay, if you're going to do it, a peel pouch should be filled and opened according to the IFU. So again, we put something too large or too awkward in there and you blow up the aseptic technique. Okay, that peel pouch or that peel pouch to package what you're packaging, inappropriate, right? Be size and strength to accommodate the items being packaged. You know what's really interesting? Could you sterilize an oversized item in a peel pouch, and would it be sterile? The answer is probably yes. Here's the challenge. Could you transport it? Can you lift it up without having it poke or damage the seals or the paper? Can you put it on the shelf? Can you take it off the shelf? So people say, oh, what's the weight limit? The 25 pounds, it's interesting. Somebody actually said that to me. Well, is it 25 pounds like paper wrap? Well, listen, we all know that recommendation is there, but that's for ergonomics, right? No one's actually saying that a 28-pound set doesn't get sterile in blue wrap. But they're saying your technician's back is not going to like that, and so there's this misconception that there's some kind of rubber stamped weight. No, if your cycles are effective, then, weight is not a huge thing. Distribution of weight, that becomes a thing, but it really is the post. What happens when I get it out? Can I actually use it and transport it effectively when I get it out? And the bigger the weight, the more odd shaped the object in a peel pouch, the harder that becomes.
Exactly. You just brought up so many different things that I like to point out with objects, and that's shape, weight distribution, all of those things. And it's part of the reason I believe that it's nearly impossible to put a weight limit on things. You could have something that's super light, like a measuring device of a ruler of some sort, and it's still got sharp edges on it and will still poke through, or a screwdriver, which could also be light and could still poke through, depending on how you manage to protect it and handle it. So there's a lot of different variables that come into play when selecting peel pouches, and then the little accessories that you use in order to protect the integrity of that pouch. So very interesting question that does seem to come up a lot. I think what people want are these limitations so that they know exactly where to go with the lines and all that. And I get it. But unfortunately, I don't believe you're going to find a black and white weight limit with any of the peel pouch IFUs. So I wanted to share another sort of creative way I think people are trying to maximize their inventory of peel pouching. But one recent story I heard was there was if you can imagine somebody with their roll of peel pouch stock and they have a narrow item, maybe something like a laparoscopic aspiration needle, it's real narrow, and they see that their peel pouch is, 2 to 3 to 4 times wider than it needs to be. So they actually cut it down the middle lengthwise. And now if you can imagine, there's only one side really that has that factory seal, and then they're going to seal with their heat sealer the
Right.
3 remaining sides and make it a perfect fit, if you will. So very creative on that part. But what would you say to somebody who was trying to use the peel pouch in that way?
Invest in roll stock, right? I mean, I understand we have limited shelf space. We don't want these items to move around, but they're manufactured the way they are on purpose, and you're actually altering it. It would be like cutting a piece of blue wrap down the middle and saying, hey, I'll just seal this side up, and then I've made it smaller. No one would do that. So why do you think that that's acceptable for a peel pouch? So that's why manufacturers out there have said, look, we've got a 2.5 inch wide, roll stock. So if your item is 10 inches long, but it's only 1/8 of an inch wide, we have your solution. It's the same with a gusseted peel pouch if you can find it. So, the other thing is low profile, right? I said small, lightweight, low profile. Well, think about adding odd shapes, or now adding a box, let's say a little plastic box or something like that to contain instruments. We've added height, profile. And really what you're doing is, if you don't pick the right sized pouch, and it's going to seem oversized to you. I hate to say it, but for this to be done correctly and for it to be utilized as a viable option, you've got to consider every item that you're putting in there, a little common sense, critical thinking, bit of a risk assessment, and then just know that you're not going to be able to jam these things in there. You're going to have to give them space. And the great thing about, say, a gusseted pouch is it's got some extra folds. It's got some volume space. And that's about all that you can do. Consider it thoroughly, critically, and see what's viable. And you may find several items in your inventory that you could. I guarantee you're going to find some that you shouldn't. And I'll just put it that way. I guarantee you'll find some you go, nah, we're not going to. The 2-pound mallet, nah, I think we're going to leave that out. It's not how we're going to do that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think no matter what department you're in, you're going to find some items in your peel pouch inventory that would probably do better in a wrap or a set of some sort. And that's just the way things are. I remember we had some dilator sets, and, there are a lot of those different sizes or whatever, and they can kind of, be a bit of a handful in terms of how much they weigh and how much they roll around in there. And it's hard to kind of bundle them without them causing trouble. And those did seem to, in my opinion, they often ended up with a tear in the peel pouch, and it would have probably been better off in a blue wrap. But, and that I think is important when it comes to your SOPs, standard operating procedures, writing some of these things into the procedures so that no matter what set or bundle of instruments comes down, and no matter what tech gets to them, the computer or whatever your procedure is tells them it goes into this containment device, this kind of wrap or whatever, so that it doesn't end up going back that way and causing problems in the long run. So always a good idea, I think, to look at those standard operating procedures for each set or whatever. But, Seth, we're getting close to running out of time. I'm just curious if you have any last thoughts or any other thing that may have come up recently about these peel pouches off the top of your head. And, is there anything that we should be sharing on this episode? I realize there might be 2 or 3 episodes on peel pouches, to be honest.
Of course. Yeah. My only thought is do your homework, and I'll use another example. We get all the time, how long can I keep these pouches on the shelf? So that's a thing. It really is a thing. You can find studies about the shelf life. You can find white papers describing the thickness of the paper. So many, we put peel pouches on the lowest step, right? Because sadly they're a little fragile. They don't have a bunch of guidance. So we're like, yeah, whatever, paper, plastic, good, thanks. And that's not true. There are plenty of things out there. So if you're like, hey, I want to add some quality to my peel pouch game, it's going to take a little research and finding ones with the kind of shelf life studies that support event related, if you're keeping it on the shelf, finding those things that are expandable or thicker paper or the kind of things that are going to help you make this right. Doing some research and finding that product is about the only thing that we can say, right? That's the best guidance.
Absolutely. Thank you, Seth. I appreciate it. One thing I would like to point out before we close this episode is Stephen Kovac and I did a recent episode about an unsung hero of SPD called the heat sealer. So when it comes to heat sealers and peel pouches, these two things go hand in hand. So check out that episode when you have time. Make sure your heat sealer is functioning properly so that your peel pouch is adequately sealed and will maintain that sterile barrier all the way through to the point of use. So thanks again, Seth. Really appreciate your help on this episode and look forward to the next one.
Me too. Thanks for having me, Kevin.
Okay, let's recap this episode. Current events in the world of SPD have led to shortages of blue sterilization wrap and this has led to a growing reliance on peel pouches. So I spoke with Seth Hendee and tried to address some of the very common questions that have come up lately about peel pouching. One question was, can we place small instrument trays inside peel pouches? The answer is actually yes, but we must be careful to select appropriate sizes and accessories in order to protect our peel pouch sterile barrier. Another good question about peel pouches is, are there weight limits for what a peel pouch can handle? The simple answer is no. There is no weight limit per se, but weight does matter when prepping your instruments for peel pouches. Amy recommends peel pouches be used for smaller, lightweight items, but these terms are nonspecific because careful consideration should be used for proper packaging according to its unique features. One last question was, can we modify the width of a peel pouch by cutting it lengthwise to adjust the size and possibly get more use out of our peel pouch inventory? The answer to this question would be no, because this is a modification of the product that is not allowed for in the IFUs. I hope this episode helped answer some of your questions about peel pouching. Please reach out to your Healthmark sales rep if you have further questions or needs for peel pouches. I want to thank you all for listening. Please remember to subscribe to our show so you are notified whenever a new episode comes out. All opinions expressed on this show are those of the presenters. Before using any medical device, it is important to review the device manufacturer's instructions for use.